Well, we were still under the contracts that we did before. We're not going to stop. We're going to pull it off of Sci-Fi. They're going to do it for the rest of the season, and then season 4, we're going to be an Amazon original.
Oh, that's so cool. That's so
Yeah.
fantastic. How does that feel though, going into it? I mean, obviously you're relieved now, but before it happens, are you already looking at the next project, or are you devastated?
Well, the when I thought we were dead, I was fine.
Mhm.
Um, I
'Cause I
mean,
mean,
we had.
you're prolific. I mean, in terms of writing, you've got tons of projects out there. So you're not like, this is the only thing in my hand. I've got my basket full.
Yeah, no, it was this was great. This was a highlight of my career. I really enjoyed this. I'm sad not to be working with these people again. But I'm proud of the work we did. We did good work. We were solid. It's not our fault that it went south. And I'm at peace with that. And I understand that we're gamblers. We're
Mhm.
artists. Um,
Totally. Every
that
single word, right? You don't know what's going to turn off whoever's reading your story.
Yeah, and
It could
and
happen like that too. Simple word could turn off somebody from enjoying your work.
well, or I could do great work, and the publishing house could put lousy art on it, or it turns out the buyer who was reading it for one of the big chains had a sandwich that was disagreeing with them when he read it and didn't like it and didn't buy any. I mean,
Yeah.
it's none of it is about merit. It's all about being in the right place at the right time, and that's you do good work because it bends the odds, and then you roll the dice and see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, you though are a team player. I mean, you wrote the Leviathan's Wake with your co-author. And obviously the television show is a collaborative effort as well. I mean, you must be good at kind of manipulating the forces that make a project good.
Well, I like playing with the people I like playing with. I think you have to understand the whole Expanse project began because I was playing in Ty's tabletop role playing game and thought, hey, this is awesome. We should
I know, right?
we should do this. This is great. It
But
was
yeah, that
fun.
history is mixed up with G.R.R. Martin, though, too, right? I mean, there's that shadow hanging over there as well. That
Yeah,
greatness now, right? I mean, that's just kind of, you're the next generation of that dude, basically.
well, I understand that there's that story, and I understand that there's that narrative, and I
Or,
and
yeah,
I
man,
love George, but
that
you understand
history.
that whole thing where George is a demigod and a name to conjure with and critically important. He's just George to
Right?
me. I mean, I played in role playing games with him before he had the show. I've been over. I go to his house. It's there's. I don't have the same experience of him being a mythical. So you know, it's like I can be the next George. He's just right there. He's fine.
Yeah, right.
Um,
But how do you handle your own burgeoning legend, your mythology, basically? I mean, that's kind of
um,
happening too right now, isn't it? Where your name kind of drops jaws.
at this point, I'm dealing with it with a great deal of humor and disbelief. I have had George is not the only famous friend I've got, and I've understood from the beginning that there's um, this bifurcation between um, who you are and who people think you are, or who people imagine you to be, and understanding that those are two different people.
Hmm.
That's just healthy. That's just
No, no
I
doubt. I mean, how you're the kid, right? 13 writing stories in the lunchroom,
yeah,
right?
no, yeah, that was I've been doing this since for on and off for a very long time, and I got better, which is good because those first ones were terrible.
Did you get better, or did people start appreciating what you were doing?
Oh no, I got better. Oh
You
no,
got better.
no, I am very clear that this is an ongoing process of learning, and that
Unfortunately, right? I'm aware of that too. It's
well,
very painful. The blisters linger.
the blisters linger, but you build up a callus over time, and And there are times when, you know, you'll come across somebody who did something like really abstract, you know, something really cool with paragraph, and you'll think, "Oh, hey, look what you can do with paragraphs. I didn't know you could do that. Can I do that?" And then you have something new in your toolbox. And then next time you write something, you have a little extra thing that you could also include there. And then you get a little better, you get a little better, you get a little better, and then
Yeah.
yeah.
What were you writing all those years ago, though? Were you in a genre then, or were you just putting stories down on paper?
The one I did, I mean, when I was the very earliest stuff I did was like fifth grade, and that was just over the top splatter punk horror gore scary plotless bah.
Yeah, I gotcha. You
Because
have
dude,
words, put them down on paper. You were a
I
reader, though, right? I mean, what were you
oh
reading
yeah,
then? What was influencing you and in your writing?
you know, I was an omnivore. I've always been an omnivore.
Me too.
My dad used to read to me a lot. My mom was in architecture school, so my father was kind of the lead parent because my mom was off doing like serious school, and then doing, you know, architecture. She was the primary breadwinner for the family. So my dad spent a lot of time reading to me, and you know, he read me Max Beerbaum. He read me Enrique Anderson Imbert, who was amazing, and that one was really cool. I'll get back to that one. And he read me like Dorothy Sayers and Arthur Clarke, and just whatever came to hand was. Uh, and so the first one I can remember doing that I think was really a story. Was in middle school, and I was doing this kind of riff on the Secret Lives of Walter Mitty,
Uh-huh.
the Thurber story. I was kind of doing
All,
my
all I'm
version.
aware of is the movie that came out a few years ago.
Yeah, I didn't do the movie. I did the short story, and that I kind of that was enough for me. That one was good.
I
And I
mean, you
like
were already engaged in the short story medium, though, while you were writing your first stories.
well, yeah. I mean, I'd read a bunch of short stories. I read a bunch of novels too. But writing a novel seemed like really long. And I was in like seventh grade, and I wanted, you know, didn't want to write a novel. But
Strangely enough, you're not the only person I've talked to who's written novels in their younger years. Now, to me, it's impressive. The most normal people, you don't write novels in middle school. You play football and give each other Charlie horses. I mean, it's pretty cool that you sat down and were capable enough at such a young age to put, you know, 40,000 plus words down on paper.
well, yeah. I mean, there's a certain endurance there. I mean,
I mean, there's a stick to itiveness. I mean, that takes a certain type of mindset. And if you're
and
working with that mindset, you're adding to it as well, right? And making
well,
yourself better.
and you're
You gotta,
practicing. And I mean,
right?
really, I'd love to say that it was you could do this without practicing, but
Man,
really,
you need to write every
writing
day.
writing writing a few 100,000 words of crap really does help you get better off.
Does.
So
I mean, what did Fahrenheit 451 help me out? My brain is not working.
Bradbury.
Thank you. Ray Bradbury said he wrote 4 stories a month because one of them had to be good. That's the
It's, you
best
know,
quote. I mean,
it's
you just
not
write
a
and hope.
well, and you get better by doing it. You know,
Do you know? Do you know you're writing well now, or is it always kind of a crapshoot when you hit submit?
no, I never know. I mean, I feel the best about a story when I am profoundly ambivalent. When I'm looking at it and I think I don't. This could be the best thing I've done. It could be the worst thing I've ever done. It could be the final proof of the end of my career, or it could be
They'll laugh me
award
off the
winning.
stage.
Um, and usually that means I'm somewhere uh, kind of in the right place. If I write it and I go, yeah, that's gonna need work, then it's gonna need work. If I write something and it's absolutely the best thing I have ever done, and I just know this is the moment that's gonna change everything.
This is a
Um,
recipe for disappointment in my book. If you think it's that good, somebody's going to break your heart.
Well, if I think it's that good, usually by the time I wake up the next day, it's turned shitty without my changing anything. So
Okay,
it's
at least
really
you're
more of
aware of it. Usually, I'm never self-aware enough to know it's not good until somebody's told me, "Dude, you need to go." No, go ahead.
no. It doesn't mean that it's bad either. It's
Yeah,
just it's more a statement about my blood chemistry at the time than about the quality of the story.
yeah, no, I
You
see.
know, I did a I did on one novel once. I was writing the last chapter. I was going till like midnight to finish it, and I finished it, and it was glorious, and I felt satisfied. And then I went to sleep, and by the time I woke up in the morning, I was convinced it was shit. Yeah, it's just
Was
it's
it?
just,
Obviously, when you do something, it takes many times going back over it and making it the way it needs to be. So waking up in the morning, at least you have it written, right?
yeah, no, and it was a decent draft. It was just about blood sugar. I had some breakfast, took a nap. It was fine.
Are you still playing around with short fiction? Or are you? Obviously, you're. How many series do you have right now? Three ongoing, or is it just two?
At this point, well, it depends on how you count it, really. I'm under contract for um, two more Expanse books, and then Ty and I are doing another space opera trilogy after that. So those are all under contract, but I don't have to do them all at the same time.
Under the same
Um,
pseudonym?
yeah, this James
Uh,
S. Corey stuff. And I don't think this has been announced anyplace, so don't tell anyone. But I'm also doing a
you're on a podcast. You want to say anything? I mean,
yeah,
I'll
no, but
stop you before you get going
no,
too
no,
far. But
no, no, no. I'm finishing up the contracts on a new fantasy trilogy that I'm doing on my own.
oh, cool.
So that's gonna be 8 books under contract, but I'll be doing um three of them. I'll be finishing one contract before I start the next, but it's really only kind of two series. One of them just kind of goes out farther.
The Expanse, Leviathan's Wake. Do you call it the Expanse? The whole 7 books that have been published, the 9 that will be published. Is it
Yeah,
the
it's
Expanse in
the
general?
series. The series name is The Expanse.
So why'd you decide to work on that novel with another author? I don't think you've done that before, right? And I didn't see it. And if you did,
Well, I did actually. I did a collaboration with George R. R. Martin and Gardner Dozois, who just passed this last week.
oh
Gardner did.
yeah.
We did a book called Hunter's Run,
Oh, okay.
um,
Wow. Okay.
and yeah, it was fun. It was an interesting project because they started doing it when I was about 7, and had traded it back and forth and needed someone to finish it up and pulled me in to do that. So,
That's jumping into the deep end of the pool, isn't it? Kind of in a way. I mean, that
well,
takes some bravery.
given that the manuscript was done on a manual typewriter,
Right.
yeah, it was kind of a trip.
That's
But
crazy.
I
That's
saw what
scary
they had.
too. That takes balls. I mean, you write 40,000 more, plus words on a typewriter. What do you do with all those papers? I keep thinking about that Michael Douglas movie. What was it
Yeah,
called? Wonder
Wonder
Boys or
Boys,
something. Yeah.
Wonder
That's
Boys.
crazy. The wind blows that whole thing off out of the
Yeah,
box.
yeah. Well, yeah.
So what
It's
did you do? I mean,
it's
was
a
it
freeing moment.
right,
Like
a free moment for that character, right? I mean,
yeah,
just being burdened by what was it, almost 2 decades worth of effort.
yeah, and fear and fear of failure, and then just kind of embracing it. That's a writer's movie. That Wonder
Oh, it
Boys is a
really is.
great movie, but man, it is a writer's movie. No, what I did was I took the manuscript that they gave me and I retyped the whole thing into a word processor, and that way I kind of knew everything that was in it because I had actually gone through the physical experience of writing it, and then I trimmed out all the stuff that I thought needed to be trimmed out, and I added in all the stuff I thought needed to be added in, and I put, the ending was kind of obvious. You if you read the 2/3 that they had done, you saw everything that they had set up. You just kind of had to play that all out to its logical conclusion. So I did
Uh-huh.
that, and then we published it as a novella called Shadow Twin, and then I thought we were done, but George didn't. So we talked about it some more and talked about the parts of the story that hadn't gotten told, and how it could be expanded, and how what it would be if it were kind of the story that the novella was gesturing at.
Hmm.
And then we wrote that as a separate novel and put a different title on it so that people would know which version of it they were buying, and sold that.
So you're working on a project now by yourself, free from the constraints of that collaborative effort. And that in itself is interesting, right? I mean, that takes totally different muscles, I
It
imagine.
takes some different muscles. It's actually, you get a good collaboration going, and it's gorgeous. The having somebody who you can always talk to when things are kind of getting stuck, or bounce things off of, or have, say, I think this would be the best thing ever, and they think,
Huh.
really, do you really think that's the best thing ever? Think I did a minute ago, and then now I don't. And
Well, that's all about
um,
trust, right? I mean, I am just sitting here thinking about the ego that has to not even be in that conversation. There
yeah,
has to be such an equal give and take.
it's um it has basically never come up. That's just never really been an issue with us.
But you guys are friends going into the project.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't know each other all that well. I mean, Ty moved to Albuquerque, where I live,
Hmm.
um, maybe a year, maybe less than a year before we started doing the books. We had a friend in common who was in the writers group that I was in, and who got Ty into the writers group I was in, and it turned out he and I lived really close to each other, and he had an Xbox. So that's the basis of our relationship. He invited me to come over on Wednesdays and degrade my productivity by playing Left for Dead. Um,
Blame him for that, right?
yeah, I loved Left for Dead. It's the reason I have a console now. But he
Grand
was
Theft
running.
Auto is that way for me. If the next version comes out and I can't play it on the 360, I'll probably upgrade.
Yeah, yeah. But and then
Um,
he was doing a role playing game for the guys up in Santa Fe. But I had a kid. I couldn't go up to Santa Fe to socialize that often. It was kind of a big uh, commitment. So he ran a
uh,
version of the game down here, and that's how that started. And really, the whole plan was do the first book, sell it for a few $1,000, have pizza money, and be done. That was the plan. It
and
was
that
for
was
fun.
successful. I mean, you went through with that. It came, you were, yay, it worked out, right?
Yeah,
And then
we over
more,
we
then the
overshot.
avalanche.
We overshot a little. We went a little farther than that. But yeah.
So, I mean, you hit submit on that manuscript, it goes someplace, and then what comes back is history, right?
Well,
You
what
can't plan what comes back. It's like impossible to say, okay, this is going to happen and we're going to be prepared for it.
nah, no, you can't do that. I mean, Ty had a hint that we might do something impressive because he is the luckiest man in Christendom, and is used to having things work out for him very well, and indeed it did. So God bless him. I'm pleased to be riding the coattails of his fortune. But it was one of those things where if we had sold the first thing and it was fun and we were done, that would have been cool too. I mean, it really was fully engaging with kind of the shits and giggles economy. um, and everything after that has been adventures and fun, and it's been great, and it continues to be great, and I have learned tremendous amounts. But all of that would have been really silly to assume or count on. You know,
Where do you see the world of science fiction going from the expanse being as, I mean, you're at the pinnacle right now. Everybody's aiming for you guys. I think that's my opinion. I don't know if it's true or not, but where does it go from you guys? I mean, you're hard and gritty, you're real, right? And you're writing.
we're all right. We're not that hard. We got a soft core. We're not.
There's not a lot of fantasy happening, I don't think. I don't think
Well.
you have a lot of stuff that doesn't happen unscientifically, or am I just being blown away by the smoke and mirrors?
I think that we tried very hard to keep um, the inertia working the way inertia works, and basic physics working the way basic physics
Right? I
works.
mean,
So
Isaac Newton did all the
yeah,
hard work for you. You just got to
highly,
follow what he said. You're good to go.
Darwin did some too. I have a degree in biology, so a lot of the biology stuff kind of has that level of kind of bachelor's degree understanding of biological systems. And yeah, you know, it's not something where we go through and rigorously work out everything and then share it with you on the page. We don't want you to suffer for any of our research.
Right.
Um, the
You want
point
to
is
make it
always
compelling,
the point has always been to tell an awesome story. I mean,
right? It just
that's what
has to have
we're
that spine of realism to it, and I think you
and
guys got off.
that is the aesthetic we were reaching for, and it's the aesthetic by and large we stole from Alfred Bester, um,
Okay.
and um, and Larry Niven, and kind of the classic guys from the '70s, and we tried to upgrade
You
it.
couldn't be doing what you're doing without the pedigree, right? I mean, what came before is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we are absolutely in conversation with a whole body of
Yeah.
literature, and we grew up out of that, and hopefully we're pushing it a little bit farther along. And I think, you know, if you want to look at the immediate predecessors for what we were doing, Scalzi was
Huh.
aesthetically speaking, Scalzi is the guy who kind of came back to science fiction and said, yes, but what if it's accessible and fun?
Yeah, right. I
And
love Scalzi. I'm a big fan of the guy. He just his Twitter account alone is 1,000 times more entertaining than what's on TV normally. But his fiction's amazing. I mean, it has this like vein of humor to it or ridiculousness, kind of like I don't know, an
but
American version of Hitchhiker's Guide or something like that, but not that zany.
the thing that I think happened with science fiction, and this is something Ty and I talk about a lot. There was this moment when science fiction kind of won in the popular culture and became something. It started off as being kind of a niche thing, and then um, you started seeing it in movies and on television and in kind of the mass media culture. And science fiction literature didn't actually follow that path. It in like the probably around the cyberpunk and the end of cyberpunks, really it wound up being a more and more insular literature, even as it
Mm.
became popular in movies and in television and comic books and other media. The books, the short stories became harder and harder science fiction. They became more and more referential to that own other thing, more and more sophisticated. So there was this kind of age when science fiction turned into sort of fusion jazz, and if you knew what was going on, it was amazing. And like the three people who understood what was happening were blown away by the books, and no one else knew what the hell it was looking at.
No, it's interesting. It's kind of blended now too, right? I mean, you have the science added into the fantasy elements also. H.P. Lovecraft is huge, I think, as a theme nowadays in a lot of fiction that I'm reading in like Clark's World or the other magazines that I can't think of right now.
Lovecraft was a fascinating character. I'm not sure he
Mhm.
was science fiction. The thing I like about
No, what does
Lovecraft
he
is
write? Cosmic
cosmic horror,
weird
but
stuff, right?
well, the thing is, it looks a lot like science fiction. It's just emotionally different because it's got, you know, here is this alien thing from outer space,
Yeah,
and
with no
if you
purpose. In fact, the alien doesn't even have a reason for doing what it's doing. I mean, it's just there.
well, you don't even know. You mean
Like
it's alien,
we're too
and
insignificant to know what its meaning is.
right, and if you were doing science fiction, it would be isn't that cool? But it's H.P. Lovecraft, so oh my god, I'm going to lose my mind.
Yeah.
It's just a different emotional reaction to the same thing.
But
Um,
nowadays, I mean, he's there still. I mean, he died 100 years ago or more, whatever. But he's now kind of interlaced within our fiction. Maybe not necessarily as the branch that you've gone on, but more of the when you kind of blend the fantasy into it, right? The magic.
you know, I don't know. I don't. I mean, if you want to talk about science fantasy, that's stuff
Mm,
like Star Wars,
Star Wars, yeah, swords and
which
lasers.
yeah, no problem with that. That's fine
Oh
stuff.
man, I love
But
it. Did you
um,
see Solo yet?
I have not seen Solo yet. I probably will, but I don't know when. But if you know the strain that I think H.P. Lovecraft came from, that kind of '30s pulp.
Yeah.
That's deep in the marrow for good and bad. you know, there are some attitudes in the 1930s that perhaps it would be nice to move past. But
Yeah. Unfortunately, I was listening to a little bit of Edgar Rice Burroughs this afternoon, and it just it doesn't date well. It doesn't work.
nope.
His fiction's dead because of his racist attitudes, basically. And you can't read it without cringing.
Well,
It's a
and
history lesson. I mean, you want to know where your ancestors are coming from prospectively, right? It gives you a good opportunity to examine that. But I don't really think it does a lot to further fiction anymore. But whoever came
well,
after him, I mean, whoever translated his work to film, that doesn't exist there, right? And that's pretty much what Tarzan is film.
well, and understanding what the roots are and what the blemishes are on our roots, and understand, and then seeing what people have done um, to address the kind of consciousness and the society that we've built since then.
Do you think
Um,
the danger? I mean, they had no limits, right? They had their perspective, they had their egocentrism. They could write that. Nowadays, we have to be very careful, right? Don't we? In fiction, we have to balance ourselves. Is that too dangerous of a topic? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't know that we have to balance ourselves. I just think we
Okay.
have to, if we say something shitty, have people tell us that we did something shitty. I mean, nobody's gonna throw a brick through my window over it.
I guess
Um,
it's wrong. That's not really what I think, actually. I feel like fiction nowadays is broadening, and I think it's wonderful. The voices that are being allowed to, cry out are just really cool. I mean, the people that are being able to publish and are being awarded, contracts and stuff. It's fantastic.
I think of it actually. I mean, this is a metaphor question. It's a question of whether it's broadening or deepening. I grew up, you know, like I said, I grew up reading
Mm.
everything. One of my
I would say
sitting.
I definitely would say not to be rude and interrupt you, but I did. So I'll take the moment. Broadening, no, because it does shallow, doesn't it? Because now, like yourself, you can reach a niche audience in a ultra effective way, right? I mean, you can actually interact with people
Well, yeah, and this I think actually this kind of interaction is sort of what killed book tours.
in a way, right?
Yeah, I mean it's a way to scratch that itch, and I think that
Well, people still want to meet you, though. I mean, if you had a meetup at a Barnes and Nobles, you would have hundreds of people there. I mean, that exists still. You can
eh,
have a book tour.
not hundreds.
Uh,
I've done some. You know, maybe 10 or 12. It's nice. It's nice to show up. I feel good about that.
well, that
Uh,
was before you made the national news, I think. I mean, you're all over the place.
yeah,
Even before, when you said yes to this, then the whole story blew up. I was like, my God, you're on the front page of Reddit, and I have the opportunity to talk to you about it. It's pretty fantastic. I was, nervous all day long. I couldn't believe it. I was excited.
it
Um,
was. It's been a cool week. Yeah.
Brian, what's been the coolest thing that's happened to you so far? That like had the opportunity to kind of experience.
You know, the weirdest thing was seeing the video they shot of Bezos announcing that we were back up. But before that, um, this is my fandom. This is my little slice of fanboyishness. The people who were supporting the show and speaking out for the show,
Yeah,
and saying that
that's so
they
cool.
wanted to see it coming, and there were names in there that meant things to me.
Like, you want to give examples or
Yeah, like
too personal?
Clancy Brown,
Okay.
you know, the Kurgan, the guy who I've been watching in movies since the '80s likes my stuff. You know, that's it's a tiny little slice, but it's important to me. And
He knows your name.
well,
He
he knows
knows
my
who you
psyeudonym.
are.
He
Well,
used my pseudonym at least.
at
That's fine.
least, the very
Close enough.
least. He knows the name
Um,
of the show that your pseudonym helped create. And
yeah,
I mean,
and that
that
was
is fantastic. I mean, he probably knows your real name.
probably, I don't know, but you know that's awesome. And you know, like Terry Crews followed the Expanse, the James S. A. Corey Twitter account. I was like, I love
Yeah,
that guy.
I love
I
that
love
guy.
that guy.
I love that he's a total geek too. He's a gamer.
Yeah,
Brooklyn Nine-Nine got the same treatment that The Expanse got.
you know,
And
Brooklyn Nine-Nine is one of my favorite shows on right
Mine
now.
too. My wife loves it.
Yeah.
We love it. We just crack up. I mean, it's so dumb, but it's so good at the same time.
It's sweet. There's
Yeah.
so few things going on right now that are kind-hearted. It's just I love spending time there.
Right. I mean, that's a good point. It's kind-hearted. The world is not kind. Open Google News, you expect the top 10 stories to be bad every single day. It's unfortunate. And you're right in that world, aren't you? You're not writing in a world where people get treated well.
Well, we're trying to be, like you said, a little realistic, and that means there's moments of horror and there's moments of beauty, and we try to have space for both of them.
When did you write the first book? It was 2003?
The
No.
first book in The Expanse?
Yeah.
First book in The Expanse came out in 2011.
2011. Okay. Well,
So
I can't do
we're
math.
probably doing that. We probably started in. I think it might have taken a little more than a year for the first one. So we may have started that in 09. We may have started in 10 though, but it wasn't a long process writing it. It was not
It's
a
amazing,
particularly
right?
arduous one.
Effortlessly, it just flowed out of you, and whatever it's going to be is
Well,
what.
we weren't worried about making it particularly good. We were just doing it for
Interesting.
fun.
How
It was a
anxiety kind of plays a part in success. You didn't have any, and you became successful off that project. You've been
yeah.
successful already off other projects, but I mean, in terms of expectation, like, laissez-faire, I'm going to throw this out there. Why not? And you catch the biggest fish you've ever caught. Yeah,
Well, and I get the feeling that's actually kind of how it works. I
I
have
do too.
other friends who the thing that they did um, as a side gig or as well, I don't have anything serious going on, so and I got 6 months, so I'm just going to crank out this giggle. Kat Valente just came out with Space Opera, which was her um, far future over the top science fiction comedy based on Eurovision. It's taking the world by storm, and she did it because it was funny. And that's I think all of her best work has all of her most not best but most commercially successful work has come out of um, doing something on the side for fun.
Just having fun with it, just enjoying the experience of being able to write. I mean, the thing is, it's kind of superfluous. Nobody needs you to write a story, so just have fun with it.
Well,
Enjoy the experience. That
and
you
there's
get
a
to be able to do
certain
that. I mean, not everybody does. People get to starve in Africa. You get to write a story. It's
yeah,
so
and
fantastic.
there's an element of play that I think gets lost if it gets too solemn. You know,
Yeah, people don't want that. I mean, look at Star Trek. I mean, the example this last year was Star Trek versus what's his name's lighthearted space opera thing.
the Orville.
Yeah, the Orville was fantastic. Could not get into Star Trek. I mean, this one's light and airy. The episodes almost are meaningless. They're just a self-sustaining story. You could sit there and let it wash over you. Star Trek feels wrong. You know what I mean? It doesn't
Well,
have the feel. For me, it didn't have the feel of the original series or the Next Generation or any of the stuff that came before. That
there,
dude messed them
there's
up.
there was a graphic designer, actually. I think her name is Paula Sure, but I may be wrong about that. Who was talking about the difference between doing serious work and doing solemn work,
Hmm.
and that serious work is something that often happens when you go into something you're totally unqualified to do and don't actually know what the rules are and have to make shit up as you go along, and winds up doing stuff that becomes and it's kind of technically imperfect and teaches you more and you discover things you didn't expect. And then when something becomes popular and people want more of it, it winds up kind of gaining this technical proficiency and perfection and solemnity, where you're trying to remake something and perfect a shape of something that's already been designed and
I guess the
defined.
example there would be Star Wars, right? Or the original series, or something that's already pre-existed that you're trying to capture the essence of and keep alive.
Yeah, no, when you have the I mean, the Star Wars movies, as they're moving forward, are getting more and more proficient and more
Mhm.
and more uh, kind of technically perfect. But they're not going to do anything that isn't Star Wars. You kind of know what it's going to be because that's the project, and we've all grown up with the project. We all know what it is, and it's going to be a Star Wars story, and that's what
As
you go for. That's
long
great.
as long as it has that Star Wars brand on it, right? If it has that logo, we're okay with everything that happens in that movie up until the credits. Or at
Well,
least I am
and
as a fan. I mean, afterward, I might go to the internet and find out, oh, I wasn't supposed to like that thing, and be ashamed.
but 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 it's not going to do anything that you don't kind of know it's going to do. It's not going to be a moment of um, fresh invention. It's going to be a moment of elaboration. It's going to be playing a new variation on the fugue. I mean, it's
I think
that's the
George
project.
Lucas jumped those sharks in the prequels. You know what I mean? He went as far bizarre as it possibly can, and coming back around and joining those two worlds, I don't think he can go crazier.
Well,
Maybe, but he was out there.
what you know you're not going to get when you go to a Star Wars movie is a movie about five guys in 1888 London building a time machine. That's
Well,
not a it's not a
yes,
Star Wars movie.
you might get the flavors though of that. I mean, that might be a good science fiction movie that looks like 1980 or 1888 London. I mean, Star Trek did that all the time, right? I mean, that was a world that was disconnected from history, but still, we got to see San Francisco and World War II and things of that nature.
Yeah, but that was part of their gig. Part of the fact idea that you could travel in time was built into the Star Trek story. So you have a whole bunch of those.
Definitely, Star Wars is not going to London. They're not going to take on the mantle of Doctor Who or anything like that. But I mean, I like where they're going. I like the flavors and what we talked about earlier with pedigree. I mean, everything has a beginning, what you're kind of aiming for. The solemnness of Star Wars is kind of interesting because that's at play right now too. People are refusing to watch Solo. People hated the Last Jedi.
Yeah,
They feel
and
betrayed.
you're always going to have some people who are angry that your vision of the project isn't their vision of the project. That's just normal. That's inevitable. I mean, people were talking about being upset with some of the later Robert Jordan books because they weren't what they had hoped that they would
Yeah.
be. And we get this all the time with the Expanse books too. Every book we write is the worst book in the series, and it's the best book in the series,
Yeah,
and
I
it's
gotcha.
the
Yeah.
triumphant return to form. It's
Mhm.
they are all things depending on the reader. And
It all comes around eventually, right? I mean, just gives the people time to digest the story.
I don't know. I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm
You're doing
doing.
what you're doing. You're doing the right thing. You're not sitting still. I mean, you're not concentrating on the one thing that you've already produced. You're producing more stuff. I mean, in terms of like looking at somebody who's already kind of gotten to a certain level that a writer could um, want to be at. You're constantly working. You're not sitting back looking at your achievements, going, "Yes, I'm done," for a minute. It
No,
doesn't
I
seem
would
like
get
anywhere.
bored. I
Yeah,
mean,
you're a
one of
writer.
my
Why do you write? You know what I mean? Is it to make money or is it to write? I mean, what is the experience that you get when you sit in front of your keyboard?
well, if you get into it to make money, you've made a terrible mistake.
I agree.
It's not a good way to make a living. Not
My
as
wife
bad.
asked me why I do this, and I said this is not a choice. It's more of a lifestyle. I mean, that's like just this is a calling. Unfortunately, I'm stuck. I just want to do it. I just want to, and
Yeah.
I don't really think there's anything else out there. You know what's interesting? I was listening to an interview that you did where you were discussing publishing is
Mhm.
something that you did not want to do. I don't know when that interview was. Well, last year actually, 2017. You said that you didn't want to be a part of publishing, but you actually are a big part of the publishing machine. I mean, in terms of the jobs that you take on, there are a lot. When you worked with George R. R. Martin, you took on an editing hat, right? And a collaborative hat. And don't you have that kind of a say in the cover art itself?
I have been given some approvals of the cover. The way that the cover art approvals have worked with the Expanse the whole way through have been very consistent, which is we say, here's what the book is going to be about, and Daniel Dosu comes out with something mind-blowingly gorgeous, and we say yes, like that, please. And that's just we never bounce anything back. I mean, it's like, oh my god, yes, that's gorgeous, we love it. I mean, because he's really really good.
That's the publisher. They hired him because he's good.
Yeah,
They
and
hired you because you're good, because you fit that groove. You make the machine work. You make money for the corporate
what
oligarchy or whatever it is.
what I was saying when I was talking about not wanting to be a publisher
Hmm.
is that when you take on like the self-publication mantle, when you sign up for that gig, you agree that you are going to be um, a copy editor
Yeah,
and a
you're gonna get all that
marketing
stuff done
expert and
because what the market
yeah.
dictates that it needs to be done, right? You need to have a good cover. You need to be completely edit. You need to be completely error free. The market dictates that it will not buy your product otherwise.
Well, and you can't skip a step. I mean,
No.
that's all of these are part of the job. I don't want to bind my own books either. I don't want to be a printer. Um, I know people. I mean, my parents have a printing press. They've got the movable lead type. They enjoy that. It's fun. That's great. If that's your hobby
Yeah.
and that's your enthusiasm, let your freak flag fly. I'm good. But
It's an ancient pastime at this point. I think we're moving beyond the book, unfortunately, for Barnes and Nobles, but I think that's happening. I cannot crack the book in years. It's
but in
everything's on
that
my.
case, you need to have somebody who's the programmer and the user interface
Yeah.
designer and and those are all great things to do. I don't have time to do everything.
No, nobody ever
That's
does,
all.
right? I
That's all
mean,
I'm saying. Well, some people do. Some people are doing the self
no,
pub thing.
and they're
They're
publishers. They really are. And once you stop
they're doing
writing and
that.
you write the end on your story and you start doing that stuff, you're no longer writing anymore. It's
Well,
interesting.
and one of the things that I've seen at conventions a lot in the last few years is people who go to writing things that are ostensibly writing panels that are actually publishing panels. We're not talking about as much about how to craft stories. We're talking more about marketing because more of us are marketing people now,
Hmm.
and it's a different art. And there's only so many hours in a convention to talk about stuff. So
Yeah, people want to know how to make money, not the
I do
how to
too.
make the meatloaf. Yeah, everybody does, right? I mean, how much of
Yeah.
a marketer do you consider yourself at all, or are you just an artist?
Well, I'm a guy who screws around on Twitter a lot.
I
I
know,
mean,
because you really do have a good presence, though. I
that's
mean, you're
sort
there.
of yeah, but it's not really marketing. I mean, I'm not going out there to flog my books.
No, I think
I'm
that's
going
the
out there.
inappropriate way to market on Twitter, anywhere for nowadays. I mean, you definitely don't want to say what you have. You want to offer whatever, right? But I
Well,
mean, number
yeah,
one on the list of marketing things right now is what? Producing content for social media.
yeah, and yet, I know people who have more Twitter followers than they sell books. So does it work?
No, it
I
really
don't
doesn't.
know.
Not like that. I mean, but it does give you an opportunity to touch base with people who appreciate what you're producing. It's so fascinating. Celeste Ng is an author who's been on the New York Times bestseller list for like the last year for her book. Do you know who I'm talking about?
No. Oh yeah, I do. I do. I
You
do.
do know who I'm talking. I can't remember the name
Yeah.
of her novel, but she's amazing on Twitter. She's so much fun, and you can
Isn't
comment
she?
back, and she'll comment to you.
Isn't
And
she Little Fires Everywhere? Was she Little
yes,
Fires Everywhere? Okay,
yep, and they're
that's what
doing
I
a
was thinking.
miniseries of that book too. I've read a little bit of it. It's pretty good. She's an interesting style, and she's going to go far. That's her second novel. But the point is, she's so personable, and she's so much fun to interact with on Twitter.
Hmm.
And obviously, you are too, because I got you on my podcast, and I've had a 45-minute conversation with you, and it's been amazing. So you win. You're the best. You win. You
God
win at
bless.
Twitter.
Fortunately, the bar was low. Yeah, but it's not something that I do because I'm thinking, well, by God, I must market myself. It's just kind of the idiom of my generation. So yeah, I'm gonna do some of that. Um,
It's
and
interesting if you speak about generations too. You come from a different generation, more so than even I do. I mean, you're like 7 years older than I am, so you actually came from the analog
yeah,
technology to this digital
yeah.
medium. at the later part of your life. I mean, when you're writing in 1996, you were sending stuff out with stamps and envelopes.
That is true.
Do you think you would have been? What do you think your career would have looked like if maybe you were born 15 years later? That's a dumb question. I realized after I asked it, I was like, that might be a dumb question. Let's see how you answer.
Well,
if you laugh at me, I'll withdraw it, and I'll edit this all out.
My experience of the internet kicked in very early.
Mm-hmm.
One of my best friends in college, his dad was the computer science professor at the state university here, and so we were going on to internet chat relay and talking to guys in Kentucky in
Mm-hmm.
95, 94.
I had my first email address
90.
in 96.
Yeah. And I worked tech support at a local ISP for almost 10 years. So the whole digital world was kind of, the early digital world was what I was swimming in. It's where I was making my money for my day job.
Mm-hmm. Did you already know that that was a way that you were going to be able to kind of formulate a community and get stuff out there and relay information and stuff like that? Were you fostering a position on the internet? 'Cause I feel like in 96, you could have planted a flag and been very successful if you were in the right place.
Yeah, you could have, but I was not that impressed by it. I was I was
using it for definitely the wrong things in 1996.
I was using it to talk to some of my friends and play on MUDs. Yeah, it was fun.
But it wasn't a publishing outlet, right? It wasn't a place where you could tell stories at that point.
Well, yeah, BBSs were though. When you had, I mean, there was a local bulletin board system that a friend of mine ran that had collaborative fiction on it as part of what we did, and
cool.
And so that kind of shared creativity in a shared non-physical location that everybody could come and contribute and see what was happening and come to conclusions and suggest pathways forward for the project. That was there from the start.
That's how Andy Weir wrote his novel, The Martian. I just think that's beautiful. I mean, that's really a symbol. That's symbolism for the internet as a whole. I mean, this connective hive of information pumped through Andy Weir to produce that novel.
And
it's wonderful.
And it's wonderful when it works, and it's terrible when it's hijacked. And it's fragile in interesting ways that aren't obvious at first. And I think we're living through that too. But I certainly didn't go into this thinking, well, computers, by God, here is how I shall. I was so much as going,
conquer the world. This is how I shall rule you all.
I was looking and going, this is awesome. I can write it and I don't have to use whiteout. I mean, that's
all right. That was always the most fascinating part for me too. Always the word processor or the art, whatever it was, the sketch thing. I loved all that creative stuff that were in a computer. Games and stuff. I mean, they were just play toys, right? I mean, they were just things to create and have a good time. I didn't know they were tools.
I knew the word processor was a tool pretty early on because I started on a manual typewriter.
That was a playground for me too, though. I just couldn't wait to get on there and put words into it. It was so much fun. I mean, I came from like journals, those black and white marble covered journals, and could not read my writing after I wrote something. It was very frustrating.
Yeah.
Do you think that I mean, like, this is the original question that I started asking about 15 minutes ago. In terms of technology, when you started writing The Expanse, are you frustrated now looking back at what you did in terms of science based on what's currently being discovered, or have you not realized anything has kind of like popped up?
It's one of the things I think you have to just agree to when you start doing, especially sort of near future science fiction, is that it's going to get dated in a minute and it's just going to be okay. That's got to be all right. There have been some things that have happened scientifically, things we have discovered that don't quite match what we were originally envisioning with the Expanse in the first books, especially. But we found reasons to retcon them, or we skate fast over that particular thin ice and move forward. As science fiction writers have always been terrible at actually predicting the future. We're bad at it.
That's your guys' whole job, though.
No,
You're
my
supposed to
job is
protect the future.
that is not my job. My job is to tell a story about the time I am in fancy dress. That's what I do. The part where you have people genuinely speculating rigorously about a possible future, that's cool, but it's a different project.
hmm Do you think we'll ever actually colonize Mars? Think we'll actually put a man on Mars?
Yeah, I think we will. I think we will actually. I think we will wind up with at least a scientific station on Mars, and
Well, we already
but
do. We have two, don't we? We have two scientific stations, and one on its way, and a few in orbit at the moment.
and I've talked to a bunch of the folks at NASA and
Oh my
JPL,
God.
and I've heard about the conversations that they're having, and it's not like we don't have a pathway forward.
No, there's a plan.
Um,
It was written in 2003. I have an opportunity to talk to the author of that book. Um, you know, I can't remember the name of the book right now either. That's how discombobulated I am that I have the opportunity to speak with you, as my brain does not want to work. Do you know the book I'm talking about? I can look it up
the
right now.
one was it Zuprans?
Yeah, I have the
Yeah,
opportunity to speak with him in a few weeks,
I think
and very excited about it. But that was what started basically the conversation, right? The possibility of what it takes.
well, and we have a bunch of people who are talking about how you would do it and what the constraints are and what the timetables would be, and I think it's possible, and I think it captures people's imagination, and it wouldn't at all surprise me. And I think there are actually reasons to get a moon base. Once you have a moon base, having interplanetary travel gets a whole lot easier.
Yeah,
And yeah, and I think that there is money to be made, especially in asteroid mining. And do I think that there are going to be people doing it?
that's the
Eh,
big question, right? Because people are
yeah,
the weak link in the chain. They're
yeah.
what will cause problems.
We're squishy.
We're
We're
squishy. We die
we're
easily.
fragile. We die easily, and people get
Yeah,
very upset when we die.
I
And
guess Total Recall kind of did it a
yeah,
little bit, right? With the section that had kind of the atmospheric problems. But one of the things I like most about your world is that Mars changes the physiology of human beings. That's fascinating how you put your imagination behind what would happen to the DNA over time in Darwinian-esque,
well, some of it's evolutionary, some of it's just developmental. If you take the same genes that we have right now and grow them in a different environment, they will grow differently. Um, and we speculated about what that would look like and how that would affect people and what it would do. But um, that's just something that we already know from having watched people grow up in different environments on Earth.
Wouldn't that be the cruelest thing? I read Scott Kelly's autobiography, his memoir, when he came back from the space station. He talked about the physical challenges of returning to Earth being the most impressive thing after his year in orbit. The pain, the swelling, all that horrible stuff. I mean, just can't imagine coming back from that. I mean, it's basically a one-way trip. You're a year in space, you're a few years on this horrible radiation-soaked planet. You're
Well,
there.
you're probably underneath the radiation subplanet. It's
You would go down to a lava tube.
yeah. Well, you don't need that much dirt on top of you in order to make the radiation less, like way less of a problem. But you do need some.
Something, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they have found a few lava tubes on the surface of the moon that make an interesting idea for, what is it called? A place to live.
Yeah. No,
Have you read have you had an opportunity to read Artemis yet?
I have not read Artemis yet. I have it, but it's on my to be read list. It's on my bio.
I love the idea of that world too. Just living on a foreign body, it doesn't want us there. We're not allowed to go to space. I mean, it wants to kill us, right?
It is not a benign environment.
It's not hospitable at all.
No.
I mean, what is the end goal? That's the thing that bothers me the most. If you look forward far enough, what are we hoping to accomplish? that we can't do here. I mean, like currently, you could take every single living person on the planet and give them an acre of land in America, in the United States. Don't know if Canada's included in that, but it's a giant planet. We could actually work what we've got to our benefit. Why do we need to go to space?
Okay, here are some answers to that. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
One really good reason, even though we can do anything we want to on Earth now, even though Earth is way more pleasant than anywhere else, is all of the things that we learn when we try to go out there. All of the techniques we discover, all of the truths about how the universe works, about how matter works, about how energy works, all of the things that you have to discover in order to do that. Doing hard work is kind of fun. Finding out things you don't know is kind of fun.
I totally agree with you, but we don't need to go. We could send our minds kind of in like a proxy state in terms of the machine. Could send it out into the Kuiper belt and see what's up there. We don't have to go ourselves, though, right?
Well, I don't think we're going to go first. I mean, I think sending probes first seems like a really good idea. And sending, one of the guys I was talking to about Mars said the way that you build a base on Mars is you send a bunch of robots so that when the crewed mission finally comes, they step out, come into the place, turn the lights on, start the coffee machine. That's the way to do it.
Absolutely. If you're going to send people, they need to have the stuff. You can't send it all with them. There has to be something there when they arrive.
And it doesn't make sense to have them be construction workers when you can do that remotely with robots. I mean, that makes more sense. It's probably going to be how we do it.
Well, in terms of like the Fermi paradox, or is it the paradox or the theory or whatnot, where all life basically will die out by the time you have the technology to communicate with a species in another system or solar system near you, whatever. I'm paraphrasing it badly, but like, shouldn't we pay more attention to what we're doing here, make it perfect the technology? Because, I mean, we're doing a bad job.
We are doing a shitty job. I mean, I'm going to give you two answers to that. One answer I will say is we should really take a look at the way that all the precedents in nature for drowning in your own shit, because it's really kind of a normal pattern. The species that does really, really, really well for a while and then runs up against the
meteorite.
No, not even a meteorite.
A gigantic volcano in Indonesia. I mean, it's like
not a giant volcano, not a meteorite. Its own waste products. What kills?
That is a fantastic point. We cannot sleep and eat in our own shit. And we are, aren't we? We're poisoning our planet's water supply.
Poisoning our planet's water supply. We are, we could produce enough food to feed everybody.
We do. We waste enough food. I don't know if it's yearly or monthly to feed the entire planet.
What is screwing us over is our garbage. We can't get rid of it fast enough.
Cow farts. I mean, there's like the waste products that we're producing are what's murdering us. You're absolutely 100% correct. It killed 64 pounds of plastic shopping bags killed a whale not a month ago.
Right.
I mean that's 64 pounds doesn't seem like a lot, but I mean that's a large percentage of that whale's body weight.
And
in plastic.
That's something we need to maybe keep a weather eye on.
But you're 100% correct that the technology that NASA produces and the ESA produces, or even the Russian Space Agency produces, benefits us. It makes it better. It makes things. I mean, there's so many things have come out of space exploration. It's unbelievable.
And the other point I would like to make is waiting until things are perfect to do the next thing is kind of a loser's game.
But what is the next thing though? Is it going to Mars or is it colonizing the moon? Because I mean, we already went to the moon and we realized really, honestly, it's a waste of money.
It's only a waste of money until we're out of helium. Once we need helium, and we're running low on helium on the planet.
Are we?
We are.
I did not know this.
Yeah. And so going up and getting some from someplace else is going to eventually be useful to us.
Where does helium come from?
Stars.
Ah!
I mean, ultimately,
So
right?
there's no way we could have exhausted our sun's HE supply,
Well, no, but
right?
we also can't go to the sun and get more of it.
But we could
I
make
mean,
mini suns now almost. It's
um,
close. It's happening. I've heard it. I've read it someplace.
yeah, you could. Yeah, I think in theory, if you got I mean, I don't know, it's a fusion drive. You fuse hydrogen, you're gonna get some helium,
Right?
but
I mean,
we
you're
don't
gonna make
have
a
a.
big sun. You're gonna get all the elements that go along with the sun, I would imagine. Maybe. I don't know. That or you need a gigantic Big Bang. I don't know how it all works. I wasn't
Well,
there.
you can get up to iron
With
after with fusion.
fusion. Okay.
Yeah, after iron, you need I think a supernova. So I can't recommend those.
One of Andy Weir's conceits was that he could make elements like that out of smelting ore,
Well,
rock, regolith, basically on the surface of the moon. He could melt
yeah,
that down and do stuff with it, develop
that's
chemicals, and
that's
then
what I'm
uh,
saying.
yeah.
When we're out of helium and we need to go get some, that's where we will go get it.
It's an interesting idea. I mean, I would love to live on the moon. I want my children to have the opportunity to go up there and live so I can go live with them, Plan on that 50
Yeah,
years from now. Why
let's.
not?
Well, there's some drawbacks. It's not that nice a place. I mean, the fines are terrible, and the water supply is cold.
If you had any opportunity, where would you go? Being
Oh,
on in our solar system, in the galaxy, in the universe, is there a particular place that you would like to see, given an
probably
opportunity?
southern Canada.
Southern Canada is fantastic. I really love Toronto.
Yeah, no, Toronto is great. I've got some friends on the other coast too. It just seems like a nice place.
Montreal is a beautiful freaking city. I
So
think it's wonderful there. It's like a little taste of Europe
yeah,
in
so
America.
the problem I have with going to Mars or going to Europa or going to the upper atmosphere of Venus, which is actually very pleasant as long as you don't get down
Yeah,
too
that's what
far.
I hear, right? You can put a
Um,
little air station there and live like right perfectly fine
yeah.
someplace in that atmosphere.
So the problem with all of those places is none of them has a Starbucks.
I don't like Starbucks though. They charge me $4 for a black cup of coffee, and I find
Okay.
that ridiculous.
I'm
And every
just
time I
saying,
see one of their signs, I'm like, nope.
I don't want to go someplace there's not a coffee shop and a bookstore. If there's a
Dude,
coffee shop and a bookstore, all
all
right,
you
I'm
need is
in.
a percolator. All you need is something to make the coffee. You're fine. You don't need the fancy.
But I want to be able to go in and say, "Excuse me, I would like a latte," and have them say, "Yes, here is your latte." And then I take it over to the bookstore and I sit there and I see if Margaret Atwood has anything new out, and that is how I want to spend my afternoons.
If you're
You
given
can't.
an opportunity to go to Mars, I think what you do before you go is you reinstitute the idea of manservants being proper in society, and you take a manservant with you, and then you give him the order to make the Starbucks.
Yeah, I don't. I don't
Solution.
think I. I'm a city boy. I'm telling you,
Are
I'm not
you
that
are you
guy.
from New Mexico originally?
Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah.
am. I was born in Albuquerque.
Are you a Breaking Bad fan, or did that make you mad?
Oh no, it was a great show.
That's
It was
fantastic.
one of I think it's the best modern noir story that's been done on that medium. I think it's just the tops.
Wow. And you throw that word noir in there, you make it complicated, don't you? I was going to argue with you Sopranos, but I don't know if that's noir.
I don't know. The Sopranos.
That's my neck of the woods, though. I mean, I love driving around and seeing the landmarks. It just makes me happy.
Yeah, the problem. Actually, I disengaged from the Sopranos about halfway through because I couldn't find the arc story. I couldn't find the through story on it.
Oh, I see.
And I'm that guy. I need to have I need just the next thing happens. I get bored. I get restless.
You never
Um,
went back and revisited it?
nah.
That's interesting because it really doesn't have a through line.
And now I'm The Wire. I'm completely in because I
Blow
see
me away.
an
Yeah,
arc
awesome
there.
television.
Breaking Bad. I see I mean, Breaking Bad has one of the best arc stories I think in contemporary television. And I was in on that one from the word go. As soon as I started that one, I was going to watch the whole damn thing.
Breaking Bad freaked me out. I couldn't watch. I mean, there were parts of that show that freaked me out so bad that I could not go back to it for several months. When he's watching that girl, spoiler alert, die in bed, and he's making a decision whether or not to do something for her or walk away. That affected me more than anything else I've ever watched. Or when he steals the methylamine or whatever it's called near the end from, the cop, the ex-Philadelphia cop.
Mm-hmm.
Chop, what is his name? Who knows? Freaked me out so much. That character was so intimidating, unbelievable. That show is brilliant. And you're right. I don't know if they'll ever come close to it again.
Well, and part of what I thought was really brilliant about it was that it was set in a place with so much light.
Yeah, and it was so dark, right? Brilliant.
It was a really good choice, and I felt like it added so much to that, to undermining the expectations of that genre, to have it be someplace with so much sunlight and so little rain, and just this very different aesthetic, and
for
yet
somebody not from New Mexico, though,
powerful.
For me, everything felt hard baked, hot desert, like you're in an oven being basically, toasted up to be served. I mean, it just felt so hot to me as a viewer.
That's just realistic.
Yeah, right.
That's just what it's like being here, man. That's not wrong.
Well, I mean, I think we're closing in on an hour, and I gotta say, thank you so much. You made me so happy being on the show, and the conversation has been fantastic. Just gotta know what's going on for you going forward. I mean, obviously you're working on 8 and 9, right?
We're working on 8 and 9. We've got the 3 after that. I've got the side gig with the fantasy stuff. We've got a couple of other things that we're doing with the screenwriting that hopefully we'll be able to announce and talk about in the next few months.
Have you been playing around with the medium of screenwriting, doing the actual writing itself?
Well, I've been doing, we've done a bunch of episodes of The Expanse, so we actually got to learn how to do this from people who know. We got to do our scripts and have Narain Shankar, read it over, and have Mark and Hawk give us notes and rewrite it and figure out what the difference is in that media. And they're tremendous differences. It's stunning how different that is and what a different kind of document it is. But we've learned, and we've had some doorways open to us because of The Expanse, that we've flirted with putting some stuff through, and some stuff has gone through, and we'll see what happens.
I hate to throw new questions at you, but I got to know, what do you think the main difference is between screenplays and novel writing, or prose writing, or fiction writing?
Who your audience is. I think the
it's
thing
not somebody like me who has both read the book and loves the show. It's a new beast.
No, it's a different document. When I write a novel for you to read, I am the last step before you. I'm the last. I mean, there's cleanup, there's editing, there's copy editing to take all my mistakes out. But the last kind of creative step before it gets to you is me. When I'm writing a screenplay, you're never going to see it. You're never going to see it. You aren't the audience. The audience is the props department and the costuming department and the actors and the director and the network executives and all of these other people who are then going to interpret it and change it and try to understand what they're supposed to do. So if I go to you, if I'm writing a novel and I say, the gun looked like something built from horn and steel. You've got a mental image. I've done my job. You have this emotional response to it, whatever it is, and we're done. If I put that in a screenplay, I got a props department going, what does that mean? What am I supposed to do to build that? what can I mean? Does it going to be large? When you say horn, are we talking like polished horn, or are we talking like the fuzzy stuff that's just come off a deer? What and all of a sudden, the description that might be evocative for you
Hmm. It's
is
confusing the hell out of this guy.
an impediment
Yeah.
for this guy who has to figure out how to make that on budget and on time. So, what he needs from me as a construction document is very different from what you need from me as a professional kind of evoker of sensation.
The wrong-headed way I always thought about that was just another way to write prose and screenplay format. But your suggestion of writing it to somebody who's going to physically make it happen is significant. I mean, it's interesting.
No, a novel is a guided meditation. A screenplay is a construction document.
My God, man, guided meditation, really? That is brilliant. You're a brilliant guy, obviously. Guided meditation, that's going in the repertoire. I'm going to totally use that over and over again until somebody asks me who actually said it, and I have to admit it was you. I'm going to pretend. That's awesome.
Yeah, dude, lie. Go for it.
I'm just going to pretend, yeah. Guided meditation, that's what we do.
Yeah.
I'll just reap the benefits. You're fantastic. And I've really thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Let me ask you one last question, and actually two last questions. The first being, what would you recommend right now? Obviously, The Expanse is coming out. When do you guys start filming?
We were dead a week ago. I don't know.
Interesting.
We're going to be opening the writers' room sometime in the next couple of weeks. I have to haul my shit out to LA in a minute here. I don't have the production schedule yet. I don't have the filming schedule yet, but soon.
Okay, cool. So we can expect it, but not now. What can you recommend out there?
If you're looking at TV, the best thing I think on TV right now is called The Good Place. Everybody should watch it. Don't let anybody talk. Have you heard of it?
No, you're the first person to
Don't talk to anybody. I think it's on Hulu. I think it's on Netflix. Just shut up. Don't talk to anyone. Start watching it. And when you get to the end of season 1, come back and talk to me.
All right. I will do that. Books? What are you reading?
Books. The one that I'm reading right now, I'm going through a bunch of Tana French's work. She's a crime novelist, crime thriller. Started with one called In the Woods years ago, and has gotten better and better and better and better and better as she has gone along. I missed a couple in the middle that I'm kind of filling in. Her most recent one is called The Trespasser, and she does some things with an unreliable narrator that were, an unreliable narrator in a way I had not seen done before, where it's not like the narrator is lying to me or the narrator is insane. It's just the narrator is interpreting her world in a way that I don't entirely agree with her read. And so because I don't understand how much of the relationships around her she's making up and how much people really dislike her, and it was beautiful. It was, from a craft point of view, it was just gorgeous.
The way that you devour it's interesting too, because you television, you're letting it wash over you. Let it wash over you. Just let it wash over you. Books, you digested that whole thing and tried to break down why it works and why it didn't work. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it's also kind of my hobby horse. I look at that stuff.
Exactly right. I mean, just how I try to figure out what entertains me about this. Why is it entertaining? Why does it tickle my fancy? But I've never actually broken it down like that. Where can we find you on the World Wide Web?
There is a website for Daniel Abraham that is www.danielabraham.com. There's one for James S.A. Corey that is www.jamessacorey.com, or you can find me on Twitter. My handle there is @AbrahamHanover.
Thank you so much for doing this and talking with me. It's been a wellspring of information.
Well, I'm glad it was fun. I had a blast.